It wasn't even noon yet. We had 8+ hours before darkness would fall. I was the only one armed with a rifle that could take down a target at extended distances. I was honest with my wife and children, told them about the impending danger. I had a hidden room in the basement that was under the stairs. It wasn't very big, only 2 foot by 4 foot. Enough room for the 3 of them to hide with room for water and food provisions. Jack, Eddie, and I would immediately start preparations. I had 30 pounds of tannerite, some glass jars, and a whole hell of a lot of nails. The oak trees that lined the street would be the perfect spot to hang them from. I had 24 Enola Gay smoke grenades that may come in handy as well. Eddie and my yards were both completely fenced in with stockade fences. Jack was not as fortunate. I mixed up the tannerite and the nail bombs, carefully producing 8 jars. I split them up, went both in the north and south directions of my street. I had about 36 caltrops I'd litter our yards with too. Eddie worked hard on making nail boards with the excess wood he had laying around in the garage. I told Jack and Eddie I felt like we were preparing for the purge. Neither had any idea what I was referencing. I had no idea how many of these shitbags would be showing up. Could be 2, could be 10, but we'd have to be as ready as we could be. Air traffic was suspiciously quiet throughout the day. No signs of either Russian or American jets all morning. Just after noon, Chris finally showed his face from Jack's basement. He asked what we were up to. Jack filled him in on what we were preparing for. He immediately asked for a gun to protect himself. No effing way, I said. I don't like you, and I don't trust you. Jack, do not give him one, I commanded. Jack tried to convince Eddie and I that 4 armed men are better than 3. Not when that 4th guy was Chris. Eddie wavered and was considering Jack's idea. This was the division I had feared. We were preparing for an imminent attack, and were wasting time arguing whether to let Chris be armed or not. I'd grown to trust Eddie and Jack over the years. Trust was not something I easily granted people. Now in a WROL event, trust was an even bigger issue. There was no fear of the justice system or incarceration to stop someone from showing their true colors. I told Chris, take your ass back inside while you still had the opportunity to do so. He wasn't moving fast enough, so I raised my AR to him. I told him I never point a gun at someone without meaning it. Jack, I hate to put you in this spot, but as long as I'm here, there's no reason for him to show his face. I'm giving you till the count of 5 to turn around and go back inside. Chris took the warning to heart and disappeared. Jack was none too happy with me, but I didn't care. My number one concern was protecting my wife and kids. I suggested the 2 of them go recharge with some lunch and hydrate. It's going to be a long night. I would stay outside and be on watch while things cooled down between us. Eddie had manufactured 16 nail boards and had spray painted them camo with the paint I supplied. We carefully had positioned them in neighboring yards to give us fair warning if anyone was approaching. Between those, the caltrops, and the tannerite explosives, I felt good. In all honesty, these security measures should have been in place days ago. I just never could have imagined or predicted how fast the world would have went to shit. My wife and kids were now living in a constant state of fear. I felt terrible for the 2. A few short weeks ago, I sometimes thought to myself, I wanted SHTF to happen. I'm ready for it. Bring it on. Now that it was here, I couldn't have been more wrong. It was a sick world where tomorrow was not promised. As I stood outside watching over our houses, I heard Lucille, Jack's wife, scream. I yelled to my wife to go to the safe room. I radioed Jack, but he didn't answer. And then I heard a gunshot echo from the house. Jesus Christ, what's going on? I headed over with my rifle ready, finger already on the trigger. Eddie came out of his front door with a Maverick 88. We tried Jack again, but silence on our end. I told Eddie I'd go around back, he'd go in the front, and be ready. I glanced in the bay window from the backyard and seen Lucille laying in a pool of blood. Chris standing over her. Jack was on his knees beside her. Chris had one of Jack's revolvers in his right hand and a bottle of liquor in his left hand. He raised the gun to Jack's head. That's when I fired a round through the window, striking him. He fell down, but I wasn't sure if he was dead. I tried making my way through the sliding glass door, but it was locked. Before I could break the window, Eddie came around the corner inside and fired the final shot. A double-aught buckshot to Chris's face, a fatal blow. His first time firing a gun was to kill someone. 2 bodies laid across the living room. Lucille had suffered a fatal round to her head, delivered by her own son. Jack was hysterical. They'd been married 49 years. Their 50th wedding anniversary was less than a month away. We both consoled Jack and asked what happened. He said after Chris returned inside, he went straight for the hard liquor. Lucille had asked him to stop drinking repeatedly, but to no avail. Chris had gotten a hold of Jack's backup handgun, and when Lucille tried to take the bottle from him, he shot her, execution style, killing his own mother over a bottle of booze. I radioed my wife, told her Lucille and Chris were both dead, and to remain sheltered in place. Eddie was sick to his stomach over what he had done. I assured him it was the right thing, or Jack would have been next. Eddie had most likely blown his right eardrum from the blast of the shotgun echoing in the enclosed room. The confidence I had earlier was wavering fast for what may be coming later. Jack was not going to be in the right place mentally. Eddie's hearing was affected, and I was still dealing with a stitched-up leg. I asked Jack if he needed time to say goodbye to his beloved wife. We had gone from a well-thought-out plan to complete chaos in 10 short minutes. I grabbed a shovel and started digging a hole in Jack's backyard while Eddie stood on watch. Dusk was fast approaching, and no one knew for sure what it would bring. I felt for Jack. I couldn't imagine seeing my own wife executed in front of me. I dug in the sandy soil as quickly as possible, preparing Lucille's final resting place. I suggested to Eddie Jack should stay with him at his house. There was no reason for him to remain at his house, having flashbacks to the horror every time he walked into his living room. Eddie agreed without hesitation. About an hour had passed, and the hole was finally ready. Jack had wrapped her body in a bedsheet. Eddie and I carried Lucille out back carefully, lowering her into the shallow grave. Jack insisted on burying her body by himself. Eddie asked what he wanted us to do with Chris's body. Jack replied, leave it there and let it rot. While Jack finished covering her body, Eddie and I decided to grab any and all supplies from inside to move next door to Eddie's house. Food, water, ammo, medical, hygiene, clothes, everything we could so Jack would never have to come back here again. We threw everything in a wheelbarrow to minimize trips. Fortunately, they lived next door to each other and the trips were short. I'd been awake over 24 hours now. Hadn't eaten a thing since breakfast. On our last trip back to Eddie's, 4 houses down on the opposite side of the street, at Dave's house, we heard windows shatter. It was go time. This was it. I asked Eddie if he was ready to battle. Before he could answer, my wife radioed, said it was an emergency, and I needed to hear this. I told her now's not the time. She said, shut up. You need to listen to this.
The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. A foreign invasion is taking place in Washington, D.C. by the Russian military. At 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, large numbers of paratroopers were seen in the skies over Alexandria, Virginia. It is unknown if the invasion stems from the terrorist attack on Moscow International Airport, which was blamed on the U.S. The armed forces have been dispatched to deal with the situation. All citizens are required to evacuate or get into a hidden shelter with plenty of provisions. The National Guard is evacuating civilians from various locations. Police or National Guardsmen will lead you to an evacuation zone. All emergency service personnel and all guardsmen are to report to their posts effective immediately. Do not be alarmed. If you see a military presence, they are there for your safety. Repeating. A foreign invasion is taking place in Washington, D.C. by the Russian military. We interrupt this program. This is a national emergency. Important details follow. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. NASA has detected a nuclear missile launched from Russia, headed towards the United States. While it is unknown where this missile will detonate, all U.S. citizens should find a fallout shelter. Update: the bomb has detonated over the White House. It has produced fallout. Cities in the region, east of Columbus, north of Atlanta, south of Buffalo, and on the East Coast, should shelter in place. Cover all door cracks, shut windows, turn off ventilation, and make sure you have plenty of rations. The President of the United States will be speaking on all channels shortly. Stand by for the message.